Ladies and gentlemen, Leeds United need to make some signings. Promotion rivals are starting to sign a few players. Surely it's Leeds' turn, right? I'm joined with Jer, and we're going to discuss some transfers. Let's get into it. All right, guys, what's going on? My name is Ollie Ward. Welcome back to the Ollie Ward channel. I'm delighted to say I'm joined with Jer from Leeds United The View. How are you, my friend?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, I'm good. I'm looking forward to the FA Cup tomorrow. Excited to see another should be hopefully a win for Leeds. So yeah, looking forward to starting the new year and looking forward to what we do in the back end of this season.
Yeah, no, perfect. I mean, it'll be typical Leeds just to make things hard tomorrow, but hopefully not. Guys, if you want to see more videos like this with other Leeds United content creators, be sure to smash 250 likes on this. Subscribe if you're new and get all your comments in. Jer, what I want to start with is, how would you explain Leeds United so far? Top of the league? Are you feeling good? Are you feeling happy? Because there's been a lot of negativity around Illan Meslier, around the last few performances, me included. But realistically, top of the league, statistically, we're doing all right.
Yeah, I think as I've been saying this week to people, if you were to look at the league table now, had that been presented to you at the start of the season and went, this is where you are at Christmas, I think 99% of us would have gone, great. We're top of the table, very much in the running for automatic promotion, which we know we need. All good. I think when you look back at the first half of the season, I think the expectation, and I suppose the need to get out of this division this year, the pressure that's there, I think when you bring those into the equation, that's what's kind of set the mood, because every time we have a hiccup, it's here we go. This is the disaster. It's going to fall apart now. And everyone's on edge about it because we need to get out of this division. We know if we don't get promoted this year, it's a likely fire sale of players. Parachute payments get cut again, and teams coming down that look like they're going to come down were all the ones that went straight up ahead of us last year. So weaker squad next year, less money to spend, and you could see the teams coming down, even picking off some of your key players. So I think that's where the nervous energy is coming from in terms of negativity. I think that's what's fueling it, is just the absolute need to just get away from everybody else, start pulling away, do the things. And I think then it's, you question every single decision, and not always rationally. Some of the questions that we do and some of the blame we put on people is probably a little bit excessive. But I think it is fueled by the fact that everything is under a microscope right now, because we have to get out of this division. We have the highest wage bill in this division. Everyone will keep telling us we have the best team in the division. We're only a point ahead of everybody else, and every time it looks like we're going to pull away, we have a wobble. And if you go back to last season, every time we got into the first or second spots, we had a wobble. So I think that plays in the back of everybody's mind. But right now we're okay. January worries me. I hate the January window. I know everybody hates the January window, but it's an important one for us this time round. And I would have liked to seen us learn the lessons of the past and not attack this one with the same mentality of we should be fine. If the word should comes into the conversation, you need to do something. I do think Leeds will do something, but we'll get into that in a minute. But I think they're playing a dangerous game with a lot of the decisions they have to potentially make right now if they decide to. Well, we'll get into it, but they have decisions to make, Ollie, and depending on which way they go, could depend on what happens the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we saw last year the sort of, I don't like to, we kind of said off air, we don't really like the word arrogance, but the kind of calm, too calm for a team that should be going back to the Premier League. Yeah,
overly confident, maybe,
yeah.
considering how tight it is up there. Like,
exactly.
I'm not as confident as they are, but
No.
They know what's going on behind the scenes. They know they've all the data around players' performances and fitness levels and everything else. And we did go on a cracking run after Christmas last season. I think it's hard to do that twice, because you have a second year in the division. I think teams have figured us out a little bit more. They've had more time to look at this team. Although I do think it opens up in the second half of the season. I have my own theory on this. I think teams that have played historically a low block against us in the first half won't all play a low block against us in the second half, because their situations will have changed. Teams that are in the bottom three will now be scrapping for points anywhere they can get them, so we'll have to come out and try and play a little bit. And the bigger sides will be kind of maybe approaching it in a way of like, well, let's go get 3 points and try and put Leeds behind. And the more teams come out and play against us, then that should ideally lead into Leeds' strengths of, the speed we have on counterattacks and breaks. So I'm sure they're thinking all that in the background, Ollie. That's all to come. If it doesn't, it's a problem. Yeah. But I think that the team is good enough to be in the mix for automatic promotion. But this month's going to be important, and what everybody else does.
Yeah, 100%. I think, like I kind of said in the introduction, our promotion rivals, Burnley, Sheffield United, Sunderland, they're all adding additions. And I do see things on social media that say things like, why are people worrying about that? Half them people they're not even signing won't even get in our team. And I was like, that's not
About
the
our team.
point. That's not the point. We want to, have a competitive squad. And like Farke was saying in his press conference yesterday, that was kind of like, oh, we've got this person who can play there, this person can play there. Why don't we just sign someone? You know what I mean? I know it's not that easy, but it should be. It should be that easy. Talking of signings, is there any sort of transfer link that has come out that you think, yeah, that would be a good addition to Leeds? I know a lot of them have been kind of, this is true, this is not, this is true, this is not. It's hard to know who to believe right now, but is there any transfer link, you've reported on your channel that you think, actually, that would suit Leeds United and Daniel Farke's system quite well?
No, to be completely honest. The names have been linked, I think, will all come with issues, but then that's the January transfer window in a nutshell. Emi Buendia has played 80-something minutes of football this season. It goes against what Daniel Farke says, what he wants from a player at this point, coming in, having been playing games, be fresh, be ready to go. That's not Emi Buendia. He's come back from an ACL injury, so he's not 100%. So if he did come into the side, you're probably looking at 6-7 weeks before he's up to speed to be able to come in and play regularly, at which stage the season's pretty much nearly over at that point. So I don't see that. I think if Daniel wants him, and that's the one that he does want, he's got a hell of a work convincing a player to drop down division, because he's been pretty outspoken saying he doesn't want to go back to the Championship. And I don't think he has to. I think he could get a move into a lower half Premier League club pretty easily. The striking positions, Manuel Latte Lath would have been a brilliant signing for Leeds. I think he's a different profile to what we got, but I don't see it happening. 15 million is a lot of money, especially in this league at this time of the year. Yorkshire Evening Post have come out with a report saying that Leeds United sources within the club have told them there's no interest in Latte Lath. They've also told them there's no interest in Mergim Berisha, who I see as a third choice striker if he does come into Leeds. I think he's the one that replaces Pat on the bench. And then Sky Sports have come out this morning to say, well, actually, no, that's not the case. What the Yorkshire Evening Post have said isn't correct. Fresh reports from Sky Germany today say that Leeds and Werder Bremen are both interested in a season and a half long loan move for the player. So there's something there. And the Sky Sports article did point out that the Yorkshire Evening Post had poured cold water on the move, but that new reports suggest that Leeds are still very much interested in them. And I think they have to be interested in a number 9, Ollie, regardless of the other players they're interested in and whether they fit the system. Joe Gelhardt's going to go out on loan. Mm-hmm. That's going to happen. Can't keep the kid at the club any longer. You're destroying his career. Let him go. Pat Bamford's out for a minimum of 4 weeks, but you can't rely on him after that. I think the days of relying on Pat Bamford, I think we can all confidently say Pat Bamford's time at Leeds is done. Yeah. And we have to move on as a club. And Daniel Farke talks about this team being more ruthless and clinical in front of goal. Sometimes Daniel Farke needs to be a little bit more ruthless and clinical in the back end of things as well, behind the scenes, and making decisions on these, and be a little bit more ruthless, because being nice and sentimental to players is not going to get Leeds promoted. It's going to do the opposite. No. So I think Leeds still need a 9, which means I think that they are looking at a 9. And I think they're probably looking at a 10. I would like to see right centre-back cover as well, because it's only James DeBio, and I don't think there's any realistic opportunity of him playing this season outside of maybe some minutes against Harrogate. I don't think he plays. And if Joe Rodon picks up an injury or a suspension, it's square pegs and round holes. Farke seems pretty happy with that. I mean, so far, and it's one of my bugbears with the system, is you've got round pegs and for round hole options, and you're choosing to put square pegs in there, where 99% of managers would kill to have the opportunity to put specific players in specific positions. And he might end up just continuing that. And if, yes, Willie Nunto can play as a 9. He was bought as a number 9, has never played up there. Yes, he probably could. But is that the right thing to do at this point of the season? Is that another gamble? You know, I mean, there's lots of gambles. There's the Meslier gamble. There's the Bamford gamble. There's the number 9 all up gamble. There's the going on continue the season without a number 10. That's a gamble. There's a lot of them in there. And to your point about what other clubs are buying and what people are saying, it's not, they wouldn't get into our side. It's not about our side. It's about what it does for their sides.
Exactly.
And if you look at it, Burnley don't score an awful lot of goals. They brought in Ashley Barnes, and people can laugh at that and say it's not a big deal. Ashley Barnes will score goals against certain clubs this year and help them in positions when they need them. He'll also go on and upset teams as well, which he does. So he'll add something to them. They brought in right back cover that they've needed. They're now being linked with a move for John Joe Shelby. All of that makes them a better side. They're only a point behind us, and they're improving their team. Sheffield United are a point behind Leeds. They're bringing in Ben Burton Diaz, and they're bringing in Chowdhury, as well. That's 2 players that have both done well at this level, and that'll make them stronger as well as the team. Burton Diaz will score goals for fun in this league, especially with a very strong side around him. And then Sunderland are looking to bring in Enzo Lafay, which is a massive signing for any club, and they're only 3 points behind us. So it's irrelevant whether they get into our team. The issue is, does it make them better? And I think it does. And that means that they have a possibility of picking up more points in the second half of the season than they picked in the first half. Either we get better in the second half of the season, that's not an issue, or we need to go and sign some players as well just to cover. And it's, for me, it's just covering the positions that are a bit light. That's all it has to be. I think the squad is good enough, but don't leave yourself short when you've got such a really good opportunity to get out of this league now. Don't wait and waste it when it's right in front of you. It's an open goal here. Go get the 2 you need just for cover, and we're good. We're good.
Yeah, I think that's the point. We're not saying the first 11's awful, but it's the backups. Like, you need Ampadu in the middle of the park. You don't need him playing at right back or right centre back. You need him in the middle of the park and things like that. I think you're exactly right when you said, you can go fit in the round holes, but you're actually putting in square holes. Like, there's just no point. Like, you're putting in square pegs to round holes for no reason at all when there is options there. I know, big fan of you, so I know that you've been saying that 1 or 2 signings you think that Leeds United still might make in this window, despite it being a quiet January.
Yeah, I think if you listen to Daniel Farke, I mean, and I said to you before we came on, sometimes it's hard to listen to Daniel Farke because he goes on for such a long amount of time with his answers, and he goes off in all these different tangents. I think Dan Moylan described it as circling the wagons. I think I'm leaning more towards the Donald Trump weave, where I think at some point it just goes so far off the topic of the question that you forget what was the question in the first place. So it's hard to always track what he's saying because he can just go off in a direction that doesn't answer the question. And sometimes I'm okay with that. Sometimes I don't want them to answer questions because sometimes I think the answers to the questions leave him open for criticism. I think sometimes just give a political answer to a political question and move on from it.
Yep.
But if you listen to what he said yesterday, he starts off saying we're not signing anybody in January, that it's a quiet window and he's happy with the squad and he's happy with the balance. And then in the same breath, he says it's a small squad. Some younger players may go out on loan. So I'm thinking Charlie Crew, Joe Gelhardt, maybe Chambers, which means your squad's smaller then. So you're going to need to bring in some players to fill those gaps. But then in the same breath, he says, we don't want to bolster it too much. I'm like, well, how many players are we talking about signing here? Because it's 2 or 3, maybe. No one's saying 5 or 6, and your squad's tiny as it is. So it's kind of hard to say, well, hang on a second. The squad's not big, so adding 2 isn't going to bolster it, and you're losing 2 as well. So it's exactly the same size as it is, right? Why is that a relevant answer? So that gets your head scratching. And then he goes on the other direction. Graham Smith was brilliant, by the way. He pushed the issue of, is it smart to not act in January and wait? And Farke said about, well, if we get any injuries, then we'll look at it. And you're like, but the injuries came after January last year. Yeah. Like Jorginho Rutter's hernia came before the international break. Joel Pirro was playing hurt at the moment. We were told yesterday he's been playing hurt. So that could potentially be something further on down the line. And then you've got Mateo Joseph, and that's it. Yeah, that's all you've got. So that's the gamble. But in that whole mix of things, he does say we'll stay alive for 1 or 2 positions that we're looking at. And that was the key nugget for me that says everything else he said is padding and noise. Those 2 there are the important ones to look at. And I think that it will come down to the quality and the fitness of the player they can bring in. Most people look at Mergim Berisha's stats and say, don't want him, can't score goals. But I think in the role he'd be essentially coming into play, and given the service he'll get, he'll do all right, or he'll give us something in there. So yeah, I think it'll be 2. I don't think it'll be many, but I think it's you've got to really listen to the subtleties in Daniel Farke's press conferences and ignore what he says, because you get an emotional reaction to some of the stuff, and then you're annoyed about what he's saying, and then you've missed the bit where he said 2. But it's tough.
Yeah, I think the last thing I just want to touch on. Why do you think the fan base, there is such a divide with Daniel Farke inners and Daniel Farke outers? Like, we're top of the league, and there's still such a hatred towards Daniel Farke. I think maybe people think if we had another manager, we'd been up by now and all these things. And I just don't know where I do understand when you lose a game, you start saying you can't play this, the tactics of this. But then if you look on social media is a horrible place to be, because there's quite a lot of outers now. Why do you think that is?
I think sometimes what he says annoys people a little bit. I think, again, the Illan Meslier conversation yesterday and the explanation of that was so both sides of the fence that if you wanted Meslier dropped, the first half of that conversation, you're getting exactly what you want because he's hammering the goalkeeper. Like, he talked about not dragging him over the coals. He started criticizing the performances where he hasn't made mistakes about not being good enough. And you're like, okay, he's had enough. Meslier's coming out. And then he gets to the second half of the answer, and it's, well, he's a double-digit millions rated player. He's well thought of in the game. He was the goalkeeper of the year last year. He's the best keeper in this division. He's faced the fewest amount of shots and has one of the worst save percentages in the entire division. The facts don't back up the statement, and I get that he's protecting him. But then he says he's been loyal to us and he's stuck with us, and he could have left and he didn't. So that loyalty has to be repaid. It doesn't, Daniel.
No.
Doesn't have to be repaid. That's a player's decision, and loyalty is so fleeting in football. Like, I don't get invested in managers anymore. I got hurt by Bielsa. I didn't care about managers before that. I don't care about them anymore now. I just care about the badge on the front of the shirt, and I want to see Leeds promoted. I don't care who does it. But I think sometimes what Farke says will annoy people because you're like, great, Melia's coming out, and then by the second half you're like, well, is he coming out or is he not coming out? What's happening? And then you're on Twitter and people are banging keyboards. So I think some of it comes from that. The style of football is definitely a conversation. And I go back to the Don't Go to Bed Just Yet podcast. Adam Pope and Johnny Buchan were talking about the people talking at the earlier part of the year about boring football. And it was more so the Bristol City game. I remember it because it was my stag. And we started the stag by watching it. I'm the only Leeds fan at my stag. Everyone has just come to watch the game with me. And it was the worst game of football I've ever watched. It was so dull. But I think that's stuck. And I think there is a possibility that Leeds haven't been boring in every game this season. They haven't been. It's not true to say across the board. But I think there've been moments this year where Farke likes 2 points per game. He talks about it so much. It's definitely something that's consistently in his head. And he views a point away from home as a decent result. So, I mean, even against Hull, until we got extra goals, and then they came back. But at 1-1, part of me was thinking, he'd be happy enough with this. He'd take this because it's a point away and 3 points at home, point away, 2 point average. We go up. And sometimes I just wish he'd let the players off the hook. And I think that's where a lot of the fan base's issues are. If you look at England in the summer with Gareth Southgate, a lot of the fan base's issue, the most successful English team in ever, bar the team that won the World Cup. And he's getting hammered online because the fans are looking at it going, this is a talented group of players and a talented group of attacking players, possibly the best you've ever had. Let them off the leash. Let them go and destroy somebody. And I think fans look at Leeds this year and go, we've so much back in talent and pace. Sometimes we play so slowly, it works against us, that when you let them go and we play fast-paced football and expansive football, we take teams apart. And I think you see the two different versions of them. So then when you see the slow pedestrian version, you're just annoyed at it, and you go, and when the result doesn't go your way, you're like, here we are again, boring football, 0-0, whatever. And that's, I think, where it comes from. But I mean, there's a middle ground on this. Like, I'm not a fan of Daniel Farke's football, but I also don't think he should be fired.
I think I'm the same.
Like, I don't enjoy it, but I understand that it's effective. I understand that it's pragmatic, and I understand that there's a reason for why he does what he does. And if we get promoted, you can't argue with that. He has done the job that he was employed to do. If he doesn't get promoted, he's not here next year because that's 2 in a row. So, but I think there's a middle ground. I think you can be unhappy with the style of football, but still be okay with the manager being in the job because you're top of the league right now. Halfway through, you're still top of the table. After a dodgy start, you've gotten here. Hopefully the second half of the season brings the same.
I think you're bang on. You said it perfectly there with saying that I don't necessarily enjoy Farke's football, but stats don't lie really right now, do they? And I think also fans worry about what would happen if we did go up. Farke's track history in the Premier League isn't the best, but that's a topic for another day. Thank you so much for joining me on the Ollie Ward channel. Guys, check out Leeds United, The View, daily news over on that channel. If you want to see more collabs with me and Jer, be sure to smash 250 likes. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll catch you in the next one. Cheery. Oh.